like 30% his way to the nomination, but that's still a long way to go. I'm actually back on the platform committee again this year, and I anticipate a very pro-Israel platform again. I have nothing that shows me otherwise. I mean, everything in the Democratic Party is a fight. I'm not, as we say, I'm not a part of an organized party. I'm a Democrat. So we'll see what happens, but I'm pretty sure we'll stay on track.
Well, we will take great solace in the fact that, and look for your leadership on that committee, so thank you. Alice, do you anticipate Israel being a general election issue?
I anticipate it, and it should be, specifically if it gets down to Trump and Sanders. Look, when you have two polar opposites on this very important issue, you have President Trump, who has been a supporter of Israel. He is moving the embassy to Jerusalem, recognizing Jerusalem as the capital. Certainly what he's done with recognizing sovereignty in the Golan Heights. And most importantly, one of the first things he did was withdrawing from the Iran nuclear deal, which are tremendous signs of support for pro-Israeli movement. And then you have Bernie Sanders, who calls people that support this movement bigots and is critical of our position and refuses to even come to the table or come here and explain his position. So if those are the options, yes, it will be an issue, and it should be. But at the same time, Joe Biden doesn't get a pass either. He doesn't have a tremendous record when it comes to this issue. So either way, we do have a shining example in President Trump in terms of not just talking about his support, but following through on it.
Brad, I want to give you a chance to answer this question.
Well, there's never been a president in the history of the United States of America who has stood stronger with Israel than Donald Trump. Not one. Not one. And so every ally the United States has in the Middle East knows that Donald Trump stands with Israel first and foremost. And that is going to be the bar that is set for Democrats in this election, whoever they nominate, and whoever they nominate in coming elections. President Trump has set that standard for the U.S.-Israel relationship, and I think the Republican Party will be unmoved from it.
Thank you. Our next topic is the congressional elections. All 435 House seats and 35 Senate seats are up for grabs this November. As we know, Republicans currently control the Senate and Democrats the House. Brad, what impact do you see who the Democrats choose as their nominee having on the down-ballot races, having on the congressional races?
I think every Democratic nominee for House, for instance, in all the marginal races, and most of the ones in the Senate, they're defending suburban moderate turf. These are going to be the places where Bernie Sanders is deeply unpopular. If Bernie Sanders is the Democratic nominee, and I think he has the best chance of all the Democratic candidates first, I'm not a Democrat like these two geniuses to my right here, but
I don't know if I like that.
I think he just is. I don't even know why.
That's like saying "bless your heart" in South Carolina.
But Bernie Sanders.
That's how they say it in Tennessee.
The fastest movement among Democrats for down-ballot offices is going to happen the moment Bernie Sanders is the nominee, and they are going to run from him as fast as they can. I think the House is in play with Bernie Sanders as the Democrat nominee, and I think the Republicans could get to 54 or 55 in the U.S. Senate.
Paul, what's your take?
Yeah, first off, Brad's book really is excellent, and one of the things that he talks about are these suburban voters. Just to put it in context, the swing vote, there are swing voters still in America. As the white working class has moved to Trump, college-educated white folks have moved to the Democrats. Barack Obama's a pretty good politician. He lost college-educated white voters by 14. Okay, the Democrats just won them overwhelmingly, particularly on the strength of women. If you really want to drill down, it's college-educated white women in the suburbs. Do we have any here? Do we have any college-educated white women here? I have a PhD in college-educated white women. I married one 31 years ago. My entire life, every waking moment is about how do I please a college-educated white woman. It's the only thing I think about. Okay, and they're running from Trump. They're running from Trump. They're the ones who handed Nancy Pelosi the gavel. The first time in my lifetime that a party took a majority through its moderate wing, not through its Tea Party wing, but through its moderate wing. And I think that you're going to see the same thing with Trump on the ballot. He polarizes those women, and he frightens them for good reason. And they have come over, and the Democrats, if they do it right, and I think they will reach out and welcome those former Republicans into their tent. And I think that that's what it's going to come down to. And I think you're going to see a lot of Republicans trying to unhinge themselves from Trump as they see that these women who used to be their base have now left them.
So I'm not going to ask you about suburban white women.
I don't have a PhD in this. I'm sitting over here figuring out how I could chime in. I don't have anything.
But Cory, will Republicans still control the Senate, and what's going to happen in the House next year?
Yeah, and let me just, I do this on TV all the time, which is never answer the question I'm asked. But let me just stick up for my Democrats in Israel. I think that there's some people out here who've heard of the Iron Dome. Yeah. And I think that that's a round of applause. Thanks, Obama.
Thanks, Obama, for
there's
Iron
a $31 billion MOU that was signed between the U.S. and Israel. So, I mean, like, thanks, Obama. And, you know, I would venture to say I don't want to go into the Iran deal, but we have to make sure they stay far, far away from a nuclear weapon. And I'm not sure we have any clarity on that as we speak, whether or not it's the Iran deal or whatever. But I will say this. The Democrats will stay in control of the House. Nancy Pelosi will remain the Speaker of the House. The frightening part is that I think, as Brad said, I would agree with him that I believe that there may be some seats gained in the United States Senate. It's going to be a tough sleigh for Democrats. But I will tell you this: in Arizona, in particular, I do think that you'll probably have a seat to flip. But other than that, I don't see too many bright spots for Democrats.
Alice, we're almost out of time, but what do you think is going to happen in the House and the Senate?
I think we have 435 completely different races when it comes to the House, and each of them will be based on what is going on in that certain community. And look, I will hand it to Democrats in this midterm election, AOC and the Democrats getting these women out to vote, engaging them, and getting women not just to run, but to vote. Hats off to them. They did a tremendous job. Republicans are working on making inroads with that, with Elise Stefanik and others. But there's a big difference. There's two words to describe the difference between 2018 and 2020. Donald Trump. With him on the ticket, that will really help galvanize Republicans to, as Bakari says, get off the couch and go vote. And he is already, you're seeing endorsement after endorsement of him supporting Republican candidates in the House and Senate. And with him on the ticket, that will be a big factor.
So we have less than a minute left, but I want to ask one final question, which is our final topic, which is bold predictions. So I'm going to ask each of you to make a bold prediction of something that's going to happen this November. And why don't we start with you, Bakari?
Well, I'm out of the prediction business because I thought Hillary Clinton would be president of the United States. So let's preface that. But I do believe that as we go into January, we will be inaugurating Joe Biden and Kamala Harris as president and vice president of the United States of America.
Wow. Paul? This is not a prediction, it's a certainty. On Thursday, July 16th, that's the date the Democrat gives her or his acceptance address. On that day, to interrupt that narrative, Donald Trump will call a press conference at Mar-a-Lago. He's going to dump Mike Pence and put Nikki Haley on the ticket to try to get those suburban moms. You watch. Guaranteed. He put Trump in charge of, Trump put Pence in charge of coronavirus to throw him on the bus.
Brad.
In January 2021, Nancy Pelosi will not be the Speaker of the House. If Donald Trump is reelected, if Donald Trump is reelected, the Speaker will be Kevin McCarthy. And if Bernie Sanders is elected, it will be whoever AOC picks.
God bless us.
Alice, what's your bold prediction?
I think we will certainly have a wave like we've never seen on the right and the left. And to agree with what Bakari and Paul said, we will see a female on the ticket. I'm talking whether it might be on the right, it might be on the left, it might be at the #1 position, it might be #2, but I do expect to see a woman there.
Wow. So unfortunately, we're out of time, but I want to thank our panelists, Bakari, Paul, Brad, and Alice. I'm Rob Bassin, reminding you to find out where the candidates stand, to support the pro-Israel candidates of your choice, and to get out there and vote this November. Thank you.
please welcome President of the Republic of Colombia, Iván Duque Marquez.
Thank you so much. It's a great honor for me to be here in APAC, and it's a great pleasure for me to speak before you to talk about Colombia. We are a nation that has learned the value of resilience. We are a nation that has learned to turn every single adversity into the most important opportunity. Maybe 20 years ago, if I were standing here, you would have heard a speech of a country that was facing major turmoils. But in the last 20 years, Colombia has turned its story into a success story. We have expanded life expectancy. We have increased income per capita. We have improved our security. We have made our economy a vibrant economy and an example in Latin America of defending the principles of entrepreneurship. And we have strengthened our democracy. Today, we have become a member of the OECD. And we will continue to embrace those values to look towards the future. 18 months ago, I had the privilege of having my oath of office in Colombia and tell the Colombian people that we wanted to work under three principles: the rule of law, defending the private sector and private initiative, and making small and business part of the engines of that transformation. But we also made a big call to work for fairness. And in 18 months, we have made tremendous progress. Today, the Colombian economy is growing above the world average, the regional average, the OECD average. And that is taking place because we defend free enterprise as part of social transformation. We've also reached, in 2019, one of the lowest homicides rates in 40 years with the double of the population. We have reached the highest results ever on tourism and agricultural exports. But most importantly, we're making a social change. In just 18 months, 80,000 students are going to free public education in the universities because we believe education makes a big change. But all the successes that we're reaching are also because we consider that values, principles, and vision with our allies are very important. We have shared those visions with the United States, and we have also shared those visions with allies like Israel. We have received bipartisan support and bicameral support in the United States, and we have received a multi-party support in Israel for the vision that Colombia has. And we know that if we share those values, we have to cooperate, and we have to work together. That's the reason why, with Israel, since 1949, we have built a lasting relationship. And this year, we will put in place and in motion the free trade agreement with Israel so that we can jointly move investment, entrepreneurship, science, technology, and agricultural development. The same happened with the United States. We built a free trade agreement that is helping us export more, reach new markets, and give opportunities to Colombians in different places of the country. But we also share the values of security. because we see security as a democratic value and as a social asset. And we have received from the US and Israel support to fight terrorism, because we know that terrorism is an expression of corruption. And we have also made clear that we will work with our allies to fight every single terrorist organization in the world. That's the reason why a few weeks ago we had a summit in Bogota with other Latin American countries, and we decided to adopt the terrorist list from the United States and the European Union. And it is to make clear that organizations such as Hezbollah need to be destroyed, like ELN, like the FARC dissidencies, like Hamas, because we cannot tolerate terrorism as an expression. And that's the same reason why today we want to see the values of fairness taking place. We have to learn from our allies, and we have to work together to provide opportunities for those who are impoverished. We need to allow kids from low-income families to have the access to nutrition. But we also know that that only happens if we also share the values of innovation. And this year, with the United States, we will increase the technical cooperation on those fronts. But we will also be able to work with Israel to have a Colombian Innovation Office in Israel that will take that knowledge to be applied in Colombia, because that's the work that has to be built upon between allies. I also want to express to you that the history of Colombia has also been enriched by the history of migration. We have received migrants that have made a difference. And in years of distress and in years of sorrow, Colombia had the doors open to Jewish immigration to Colombia. They built very important companies in the 20th century. The first blood bank. We had the advances in medicine with the help of those migrants. And today, when we look back, we know that migration has produced a very important positive effect in Colombia. And that's the reason why today, instead of getting into the path of anti-immigration, we have supported the Venezuelan brothers and sisters that have come to Colombia because they have fled away the impacts of a terrible dictatorship. That dictatorship in Venezuela has also the traces of anti-Semitism. And they have also opened the doors for Hezbollah to operate in Venezuela to support the crimes they continually commit against their population. So that's the reason why my visit to AIPAC is also a call for you to look at Latin America and to see that the values of democracy, rule of law, and fairness have to be protected. And they will only be protected if we are together also working so that that dictatorship in Venezuela comes to an end and we can see a continuous progress in that country for the sake of the rest of the Latin American nations. It is our duty to see that the political battles we face in the world today are not about fights between right and left. It's about demagogues versus pedagogues. The demagogues are the ones who build their path to power, generating social conflict. They also demonize the private sector. And at the end, they destroy the values that we have defended, as has happened in Venezuela. The pedagogues are the ones who teach and work with society so that we know that we can get success only if there's hard work, but also if there's fiscal prudence, and also if there's no demagoguery, and we can ensure that every penny is soundly invested in those who are in need. So we have to defeat the demagogues, and we have to promote the pedagogues in the way we approach politics. We, as Colombia, have been a nation that has evolved through the years with hard work and with the help of the international community. Allies like the United States and Israel have been very supportive of our transformations, and we will continue to embrace those values, and we will continue to defend them in every instance in the international arena, whether it's bilateral or multilateral. I hope this year to visit Israel, to put in motion the free trade agreement, and to invite Israel to invest in Colombia. And we also want our exports to reach those markets, because we believe that it's through friendship and genuine alliances that we can make a positive impact. For me to be here in AIPAC, it's a way to recognize that story, that path, but also to make clear that for the challenges we face, we must, more than ever, continue to be aligned with the principles of democracy. Because when we see diplomacy without principles, that's hypocrisy. When we see power without principles, that is an expression just of pure ambition. We are here to recognize that the values that we have embraced are the values that will take us to a better stage. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Please welcome former United States Senator Rudy Boschwitz.
After serving in the Senate for more than a dozen years in the United States Senate, in the spring of 1991, I got a call from President Bush, the elder, and he said, "Rudy, I need you to go to Ethiopia." I knew why he was calling. By 1991, I'd been involved with Ethiopian Jewry for 20 years. My own family fled from Nazi Germany when I was just 2. What an opportunity now for me, a Jewish immigrant, to negotiate the freedom for the black Jews of Ethiopia. I understood the difference that I understood the difference that 50 years had made, how Jews had been powerless against the Nazis, but now the black Jews of Ethiopia, the poorest of the poor, stood with the strength of the U.S. government and the State of Israel as partners. In late May of 1991, our negotiations succeeded and Operation Solomon occurred. In just 36 hours, Israel airlifted 14,325 Ethiopian Jews to freedom. Boy, did those Israeli planes come in, go out, come back. It was quite a scene. And while the airlift made international news, many people didn't realize and don't realize that Israel spent decades inside Ethiopia and neighboring Sudan, helping Ethiopian Jews to escape to Israel. The Israeli Mossad conducted hundreds of clandestine operations across air, land, and sea, smuggling their Jewish brethren to freedom. Their work was dangerous. Their work was dangerous and only possible with the partnership of Ethiopian Jews inside the refugee camps who smuggled their own people to meeting points across the region. One such brave soul, responsible for the freedom of as many as 900 of his fellow Ethiopian Jews, went on to live and is living a successful life in Israel. Today, he leads a tech career center, an organization helping to guide Ethiopian Jews into the startup nation. He's a hero. And today we learn the story of his bravery and his triumph. Meet Tekeli.
My name is Takele Mekonnen. My grandfather was a rabbi and the leader of the Jewish faith in Ethiopia. He taught me the principle of tikkun olam. If you save one person, you save the whole world. Growing up, we prayed that the day will come when our people make it back to Jerusalem. But for most Ethiopian Jews, this was just a dream. At that time, a civil war was tearing apart the country. It was not safe to be Jewish anywhere in Ethiopia. We dreamed to be in the one place where it was safe for us to be ourselves. We dreamed to be in Jerusalem. One day, my friends and I decided we must leave Ethiopia and go to Israel. 20 of us set off in the middle of the night. We traveled in the dark because we knew if we were caught, we would be thrown in prison. We thought it would be an easy journey, but it was very tough. Ethiopian. Thank you. Our goal is 3,000 Ethiopian Israeli in high-tech job in the next 8 years. And thank you. And we are nearly a third of the way there already. I would also like to say that this was a very long and difficult journey made by my thousands of Ethiopian Jews. I was only one, and none of us could have ever completed our journey without the help of my people, particularly the man and the woman of the Mossad. I am joined by my friend and the Mossad agent responsible for so many of the operations that brought my people to Israel, Daniel Limon. You are a true hero and a dear friend. Thank you, AIPAC, for all that you do to support Israel. Thank you very much.
Please welcome former mayor of New York City and Democratic presidential candidate Mike Bloomberg.
Thank you. Good morning. I can't hear you. Good morning. I can't tell you how glad I am to be here at AIPAC. And I don't think I've ever talked to as big a crowd, certainly not one that I respected as much as this one. So thank you all for doing this. Now, Israel is small, we know, but resilient and surrounded by adversaries. And if you caught the last couple of presidential debates, you know that I can empathize. Let me thank Board Chair Friedman for inviting me to join all of you today. And I particularly want to congratulate the new president, Betsy Byrnes-Korn, and wish her well as she begins one of the easiest jobs in Washington. Betsy, I don't know whether congratulations or condolences are in order, but good luck. Let me also say hello to all the New Yorkers in the room. I just hope all of you voted correctly for the mayoral candidate back in 2001, 2005, and 2009. And if you didn't, well, you'll have a chance to atone in 2020. And I want to thank all of you for being here, especially the young people in this room more than 4,000 students from all over the country. America needs your voices more than ever, and your presence here and the pro-Israel identity that you proudly bring to your classrooms and campuses give me hope. Because at a time when some try to make strong supporters of Israel feel unwelcome in social justice conversations, your refusal to be intimidated reminds us of the courage and integrity that we need in our political discourse. Don't stop. I could not be more proud of you or more grateful, and to be here with you this morning at AIPAC is one of the great things in my life. Thank you for what you do. It ain't easy, just do it. Now, the work that all of you are doing to support Israel is very personal to me. Growing up, my mother was our temple president and kept a kosher house, but my parents taught me that Judaism is much more than our rituals. It is also about living our values. For my parents' generation, that meant realizing the dream of a Jewish Holy Land. And for us, it is about revering the miracle that is now the modern state of Israel. Now, my mother and father never had the means to visit Israel when I was a child, but I've been lucky enough to travel there many times. More than once as an adult, I went with my late mother to see the Magen David Adom Blood Center in Israel that we named after my father. And the Hadassah Hospital wing that we named after my mother. And in 2014, when the FAA banned American carriers from flying during Operation Protective Edge, I traveled to Israel on El Al. They weren't afraid to fly. You know, sometimes gestures matter, and in my own little way, I wanted to show the world that Friends of Israel will never let fear of terrorism keep us out of our Holy Land. That was true back in 2014 when Israel faced attacks from Gaza. It was true when I had to take shelter in Sderot as rockets rained down. And it's still true in 2020 as rockets continue to be launched at innocent civilians in cities and towns across the Jewish state. For as long as Israel has existed, terrorists have threatened our ancestral homeland. Well, guess what? The state of Israel, the Jewish people, and the pro-Israel community will never back down in the face of hatred. And if I'm elected president, I can promise you I will always have Israel's back. Because Israel has a right to defend itself by itself. And that means I will never impose conditions on military aid, no matter what government is in power. And that includes $3.3 billion in security assistance and $500 million in missile defense we provide Israel every single year, thanks to the 2016 Memorandum of Understanding. Look, Israel is on the front lines, countering American enemies in the region and sharing valuable intelligence and experience with us. So conditioning foreign aid wouldn't only impair Israel's ability to keep itself safe, but our ability to keep ourselves safe as well. After all, American security and Israel's safety are inextricably linked. And as president, I give you my word, I will never, ever compromise on the safety and security of Israel. I also promise to always oppose the BDS movement's pernicious efforts to delegitimize and punish the State of Israel, and I already have. I will stand up to efforts to hold Israel to a double standard at the United Nations, and while I believe it shouldn't have been done as part of a peace negotiation, I've always supported the U.S. Embassy, moving the U.S. Embassy to Jerusalem, the eternal capital of the Jewish state. And as president, I will leave it there because that's where it belongs. Now, I will also never stop working for a peace plan that has at its foundation two states, one Jewish and one Palestinian, achieved through direct negotiations, because Israel must remain a prosperous, secure, and stable Jewish democracy, and because Palestinians deserve dignity, democracy, and opportunity as well. Bipartisan support for Israel has been a defining feature of American politics since 1948, and this organization has played a critically important role in fostering it. The relationship between our two countries has been so strong precisely because it transcends partisan politics, both here and in Israel, and because it is built on shared values: freedom and democracy, law and justice, integrity and compassion, innovation and ingenuity. But in recent years, we've begun to see cracks in that bipartisanship, and that is deeply disturbing. Unfortunately, not all of my fellow Democrats in this race have attended an AIPAC conference. One of them, Senator Sanders, has spent 30 years boycotting this event. And as you've heard by now, he called AIPAC a racist platform. Well, let me tell you, he's dead wrong. This is a gathering of 20,000 Israel supporters of every religious denomination, ethnicity, faith, color, sexual identity, and political party. Calling it a racist platform is an attempt to discredit those voices, intimidate people from coming here, and weaken the U.S.-Israel relationship. The reality is, AIPAC doesn't fuel hatred. AIPAC works to combat it and the violence that it can produce. And if more elected officials spoke to the people here, they'd understand that. Now, I've always believed that you should meet with people who may disagree with you and listen to them. That's how I've always led. But there's one thing I know about Jewish people, is that we don't agree on anything. We can't even agree on who's the funniest New Yorker, Jerry Seinfeld, Larry David, or me. Just for the record, it's probably not me, but I did appear in Curb Your Enthusiasm and throw Larry David out of New York. I don't remember what he did, but I'm sure he deserved it. Seriously, as strong supporters of Israel, we don't need to agree with everything an Israeli government does, and I certainly don't. And as proud American patriots of America, we do not need to support everything our government does either, and I definitely don't. Differences of opinion are healthy, even on big issues. Let me give you an example. Like many of you, I was against the Iran nuclear deal. But because the deal should have done more to address Iran's ballistic missile program, because we never should have unfrozen their money without mandating that they end their financing of terrorism, and because many of the restrictions in the deal came with an expiration date. Let me be clear, our commitment to Israel must never sunset. Also, I know that unilaterally abandoning the deal, rather than leading our allies to strengthen it, was tantamount to giving Iran permission to relaunch its nuclear program. And after years of compliance, Iran is once again marching toward the development of nuclear weapon capability. As president, I will work to make the strongest deal possible to constrain the Iranian regime aggression and territorial ambition and put an end to their nuclear program forever. Because the world must never allow Iran to threaten Israel and the whole region with a nuclear attack. But the larger point I'm making is we can disagree with specific policy positions of presidents from both sides of the aisle without resorting to personal attacks or trying to claim Israel as the exclusive domain of one political party. It's not. And whenever an elected official suggests otherwise, we should be unequivocal in condemning them. Because Israel should never be a football that American politicians kick around in an effort to score points. Maintaining bipartisan support for Israel is more important now than it has ever been in my lifetime, because today we are confronted by sights that we thought we'd never see outside of old black and white newsreels. Synagogues attacked, Jews murdered, neo-Nazis marching brazenly and openly by torchlight, not in some other country, but right here in the United States. Tree of Life was the synagogue that my sister Marjorie attended when she lived in Pittsburgh many years ago. She has many fond memories of her time there, so it was an especially tragic day for her and for our whole family as well. And I know there are many people in this audience who are personally affected by the tragedy as well. Since that attack, Jews have been targeted for murder in more than a dozen synagogues across America. In the New York area, bullets ripped through a kosher store in Jersey City. The windows of a Brooklyn synagogue were smashed during Rosh Hashanah, and Jews have been beaten and harassed in the streets. The fact is, attacks on Jews have been taking place with horrifying regularity. And here's why that is relevant to AIPAC's mission. Because when hatred against Jews rises, so too does hatred against the world's only Jewish state, and Israel always winds up paying the price. So if we are going to defend our most important ally, then it's not enough to stand up to their adversaries in the Middle East. We need to also stand up to anti-Semitism everywhere, including here in the United States. When we look around America, it is clear we are facing not only another epidemic of anti-Semitism, but a rising tide of hatred writ large. Because the fact is, there has been an increase in attacks on all groups that have a long history of being scapegoated and repressed for being other, different, lesser, and less than fully America. And I'm not only talking about Jews, but I'm also talking about immigrants, Muslims, Black Americans, women, and the LGBTQ community. We must stand up to those attacks together. You know, I remember visiting Auschwitz a couple of years ago, walking the same paths our ancestors trudged down to the gas chambers. And whenever I think about the Holocaust, I am reminded of a teaching from Rabbi Jonathan Sacks of Great Britain. Quote, "The hate that starts with the Jews never ends there. But we also know, don't we, that what starts with others so often ends with us, with the Jewish people and with Israel. So we need to stand up against all bigotry and hatred." For 12 years as mayor, I led the largest and most diverse city in the nation. And I was never prouder than when I stood in the shadow of the Statue of Liberty and argued that Muslim New Yorkers had every right to build a mosque anywhere in our city, including near the World Trade Center. That was the right thing to do, and it was also the smart thing to do. Our city was safer because we declared loudly and clearly that everyone was welcome in New York, no matter what they looked like, who they loved, or to whom they prayed. But in recent years, we have seen hate crimes increase, which raises the question, what has changed? There is no single answer, I think, and no single person or political party that is entirely to blame. Anti-Semitism is hardly the exclusive domain of any one group. It can be found on both the right and the left, on town squares and campus quads. But there is one fact that we cannot ignore. Presidential leadership matters. It sets a tone. It is either inclusive or exclusive, divisive or uniting, incendiary or calming. I believe the only way we can make progress as a country is by bringing people together, not tearing them apart. And I can just tell you, I will never stand idly by in the face of anti-Semitism or in the face of hatred against anyone, because I know all of our fates are linked. And as Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. said, we are all tied together in a single garment of destiny. So I want to be clear. If I am elected president, I will strongly condemn anti-Semitism wherever and whenever it appears. And Americans will never have to choose between supporting Israel and supporting our values here at home. I will defend both because I know they have always been linked, and our strong relationship with Israel is based on our values. At this moment in our history, we are called to stand up, not for a political party, but for our country and for our values and for a tradition of bipartisan support that has always defined our relationship with Israel. This is about defining the meaning of America and recognizing that all groups who have been marginalized, excluded, repressed, scapegoated, vilified, and far worse, rise and fall together. Our best hope, our only hope, is standing together, rejecting those